The cold steel of a gun barrel pressed against Bethany Rogers' temple was the first indication that the rumors were true. The mayor's son hadn't died from fever after all. She clutched her 3-month-old daughter closer to her chest as the town council of Silverstone, Colorado Territory, 1876, delivered their verdict with sanctimonious fury. "You have brought shame upon this town, Miss Rogers," Mayor Whitfield declared, his jowls quivering with righteous indignation. "Your child, born out of wedlock, is proof of your immoral character. We have decided you are to leave Silverstone immediately and never return." Bethany stood tall despite the trembling in her legs. "My daughter has done nothing wrong." "That bastard child is the product of sin," hissed Mrs. Cromwell, the banker's wife. "The good Christian families of this town shouldn't have to look upon such evidence of depravity." The irony wasn't lost on Bethany that these good Christian families had no qualms about throwing a young woman and her infant into the wilderness with nothing but the clothes on their backs. She'd been the schoolteacher in Silverstone for 3 years, respected and admired, until her secret relationship with the mayor's married son had resulted in a pregnancy she couldn't hide. "You have until sundown," the mayor said, turning his back on her. The door to the town hall slammed behind them, leaving Bethany alone with her infant daughter, Emma. Tears stung her eyes as she gently stroked the baby's soft cheek. She'd known this day might come, but facing it now, with nowhere to go and winter approaching, filled her with terror she couldn't afford to indulge. Her small room above the schoolhouse provided little in the way of possessions. She packed what she could, a change of clothes for herself and Emma, a blanket, the few dollars she'd saved, and a locket containing a lock of her mother's hair. The townspeople averted their eyes as she walked down the main street, Emma bundled against her chest, as if her supposed sin might be contagious. Only old Mrs. Wilson, the widow who lived at the edge of town, dared to approach her. "Take this," the elderly woman whispered, pressing a small bundle into Bethany's hand. "It's not much, some dried meat and bread. The nearest settlement is 40 miles east. If you follow the creek, you'll find it." Bethany's throat tightened. "Thank you." "I'm sorry, child." This town has forgotten the meaning of charity. With a quick squeeze of Bethany's arm, Mrs. Wilson disappeared back into the shadows of her porch. By late afternoon, Bethany stood at the eastern edge of Silverstone, the vast expanse of rugged terrain stretching before her. Emma fussed against her chest, sensing her mother's distress. Bethany had no horse, no wagon, only her own 2 feet to carry them both to safety. "We'll be all right, little one," she murmured, though the words felt hollow even to her own ears. The sun was beginning its descent when Bethany heard the sound of approaching hoofbeats. Her heart hammered as she stepped off the trail, preparing to hide, when a lone rider came into view. He rode tall in the saddle, his broad shoulders and the wide brim of his hat silhouetted against the dying light. As he drew closer, Bethany could see his face weathered by sun and wind, with a strong jaw shadowed by stubble. His eyes, clear and blue as a mountain lake, met hers with curiosity rather than judgment. "Madam," he said, tipping his hat. "You're a fair piece from town with a young one. Everything all right?" Bethany hesitated. She trusted too easily once before. "We're just traveling east." The stranger's gaze took in her simple dress, the small bundle of possessions, and the infant swaddled against her chest. His expression revealed nothing of his thoughts. "East, you say? On foot with a baby," he frowned. "That's rough country ahead." "We'll manage," Bethany replied, her chin lifting slightly. "No doubt you would," he said, surprising her with the respect in his tone. "But there's a storm brewing. I can feel it in my bones." He glanced westward, where dark clouds were gathering on the horizon. "Name's Ryker Hayes. I've got a small ranch about 5 miles from here. I could offer you shelter, at least until the weather passes." Bethany regarded him warily. Men's offers rarely came without expectations, a lesson she'd learned too painfully to forget. As if sensing her thoughts, Ryker added, "You'd have your privacy, madam. I've got a small cabin separate from the main house where my ranch hand used to stay. It's not much, but it's dry and there's a solid door that locks from the inside." Before Bethany could respond, Emma began to cry a hungry, insistent wail that echoed across the empty landscape. The baby's cries seemed to decide something for Ryker. "Look," he said, dismounting and approaching slowly, hands visible at his sides. "I don't know your story and it's not my business. But that little one doesn't deserve to be caught in a downpour, and neither do you. My offer stands, no strings attached." Bethany swallowed hard. The distant rumble of thunder sealed her decision. "Just until the storm passes," she agreed reluctantly. Ryker nodded once. "Fair enough." He led his horse closer. "Can I help you up?" After Bethany nodded, Ryker gently lifted her, holding her as if she weighed nothing at all, and placed her sideways on his saddle. Then he mounted behind her, careful to leave space between them, and took up the reins. "Hold tight to your little one," he instructed as the horse began to move. "Name of the baby?" "Emma," Bethany found herself answering. "Her name is Emma." Ryker smiled, a genuine expression that softened his rugged features. "Pretty name for a pretty little lady, and you are, Bethany Rogers." "Well, Miss Rogers, let's get you and Miss Emma somewhere safe before this sky opens up." They rode in silence as the first fat raindrops began to fall, Bethany acutely aware of Ryker's steady presence behind her, his arms on either side as he guided the horse across the terrain. Emma had fallen asleep, lulled by the gentle rhythm of the horse's gait. True to his word, Ryker's ranch appeared after about an hour's ride. It was modest but well-maintained, a main house built of sturdy logs, a barn, a corral with several horses, and a small cabin set slightly apart from the other buildings. By the time they reached the property, the rain was falling in earnest. Ryker brought his horse to a stop under the overhanging roof of the barn. "Let's get you settled first," he said, helping Bethany down with careful hands. He led her quickly to the small cabin, unlocked the door, and stepped aside for her to enter. The interior was simple but clean: a bed with fresh linens, a small table with 2 chairs, a cast-iron stove, and shelves stocked with basic provisions. "It's not fancy," Ryker said, standing awkwardly in the doorway as Bethany surveyed the space, "but it's warm and dry. There's food in the pantry, wood for the stove, and clean water in that barrel. I'll bring you some milk from the house for the baby." Bethany turned to face him, emotions warring within her: gratitude and suspicion, relief and fear. "Why are you helping us?" Ryker's expression grew distant for a moment. "I know what it's like to be alone in this country with no place to go." His eyes refocused on her. "Get settled. I'll tend to my horse and bring you some supper from the main house." Before she could respond, he was gone, closing the door behind him. Bethany immediately checked and found that, as promised, the door had a sturdy lock. She secured it, then sank onto the edge of the bed, Emma still sleeping peacefully in her arms. For the first time since the council's verdict, Bethany allowed herself to weep silent tears of fear, exhaustion, and tentative relief. Later, after Ryker had left a tray of hot stew and fresh bread outside her door, announcing his presence with a respectful knock before retreating, Bethany sat at the small table feeding Emma with the milk he'd provided. The storm raged outside, rain lashing against the cabin windows, but inside it was warm and dry, the stew filling her empty stomach with much-needed nourishment. She had no illusions about her situation. This reprieve was temporary. Soon, she would need to continue eastward to find a place where she and Emma could build a new life. But for tonight, at least, they were safe. Dawn broke clear and cold after the storm. Bethany emerged from the cabin, Emma wrapped warmly against the chill, to find Ryker splitting wood near the barn. He straightened when he saw her, wiping his brow with his sleeve. "Morning," he called. "Sleep well." Bethany nodded. "Better than I expected. Thank you for the shelter and the food." Ryker set his axe aside and approached, stopping at a respectful distance. "Storms passed, but the creek's running high. Crossing will be dangerous for a few days." His eyes met hers directly. "You're welcome to stay until the water recedes," she hesitated. "I wouldn't want to impose." "It's no imposition. Place has been too quiet since my ranch hand moved on to California." His gaze dropped to Emma, who was watching him with curious eyes. "Besides, this little lady looks like she enjoys a solid roof over her head." Bethany couldn't help the small smile that tugged at her lips. "She does seem to approve of your accommodations." Ryker's answering smile revealed a dimple in his left cheek. "High praise indeed. I've got chores to tend to, but there's coffee brewing in the main house if you'd care for some. Doors unlocked." The next few days established an unexpected rhythm. Bethany would wake early with Emma, and often find that Ryker had already left fresh milk and eggs near her cabin. During the day, she would help with small tasks around the ranch, mending shirts Ryker had tossed in a forlorn pile, preparing meals that were met with such genuine appreciation it made her cheeks flush, and tending to a small vegetable garden that had been somewhat neglected. Ryker, for his part, maintained a respectful distance while being unfailingly kind. He spoke little of himself, deflecting personal questions with good humor, but Bethany pieced together that he had been running the ranch alone for some time, having inherited it from an uncle. He was unfailingly gentle with Emma, fashioning a small rattle from wood scraps that delighted the infant. On the fourth evening, as they sat on the porch of the main house after supper, Emma sleeping peacefully in a basket Ryker had lined with a soft blanket, he finally asked the question Bethany had been dreading. "What happened in Silverstone, if you don't mind my asking?" Bethany stared out at the darkening landscape, weighing her response. She had nothing left to lose by telling the truth. "I was the schoolteacher there," she began quietly. 3 years teaching the town's children. I became involved with someone I shouldn't have. When Emma came along, the town council decided I was a corrupting influence and banished us both." Ryker's jaw tightened. "The father, mayor's son, married. He died of fever before Emma was born, or so they said. I have my doubts about that story." Bethany felt a strange relief in speaking the words aloud. "He promised to leave his wife to take care of us." Empty words, as it turned out. "Coward," Ryker muttered. Then, more gently, "The council gave you nothing, no means to travel, nothing. Just until sundown to get out of town." Ryker was silent for a long moment. "That's not justice. That's cruelty dressed up as morality." His words, so perfectly capturing her own feelings, loosened something tight in Bethany's chest. "Yes," she said simply. They sat in companionable silence as the stars emerged one by one. When Emma stirred, Bethany rose to take her back to the cabin. "Thank you for listening," she said softly. Ryker stood as well. "Thank you for trusting me with the truth." As days stretched into a week and then 2, the reason to leave became less clear to Bethany. The creek had long since receded to normal levels, but each time she mentioned moving on, Ryker would point out another reason to wait, a patch of bad weather approaching, a report of trouble on the eastern trail, the fact that Emma seemed to be thriving in the fresh mountain air. The truth, which Bethany was reluctant to admit even to herself, was that she was in no hurry to leave. The small ranch had become a sanctuary, and Ryker had become something she dared not name, even in her thoughts. One afternoon, as Bethany hung laundry on the line behind the main house, Emma cooing happily in her basket nearby, she saw Ryker riding hard toward the ranch, a cloud of dust rising behind him. Something in his posture sent a chill down her spine. He dismounted before his horse had fully stopped, his expression grim as he strode toward her. "What is it?" Bethany asked, her hands stilling on the damp shirt she'd been hanging. "Riders coming from Silverstone?" His voice was tight with anger. "I was in town and overheard some talk. Seems Mayor Whitfield isn't satisfied with just running you out of his town. He's concerned you might spread your version of events to neighboring settlements." Fear clutched at Bethany's heart. "They're coming here. How would they know? Someone must have seen us riding together that day." Small towns, long memories. Ryker's gaze was intense. They won't take you back to Silverstone, Bethany, I promise you that, but we need to decide what to do and quickly. Bethany's mind raced. We could hide in the foothills until they leave. Ryker shook his head. They know about the ranch now, they'll just come back. Then I should go today, if I'm not here when they arrive, and go where? Ryker's voice was sharp with concern. Alone with Emma, with winter coming on, no. He ran a hand through his hair, his expression shifting from concern to determination. There's another way, but it would require you to trust me completely. What way? Bethany asked, her gaze darting to Emma, who was oblivious to the danger, happily batting at a colorful leaf that had fallen into her basket. Ryker stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. Marry me, Bethany blinked, certain she'd misheard. What? Marry me, he repeated, his voice steadier this time. Today, before they arrive. As my wife, you'd be under my protection legally. They'd have no claim on you, and if they tried to take you by force, they'd be breaking the law. Bethany stared at him, speechless. Ryker, you can't, I can, and I'm offering. His expression softened slightly. I know it's not ideal, we barely know each other, but I care about you and Emma more than I expected to. I think you know that. The admission hung between them, honest and vulnerable. And if you decide, after the danger has passed, that you want to move on, I won't stop you, Ryker continued, his voice rough with emotion. But right now, this is the surest way to keep you both safe. Bethany's heart thundered in her chest. You'd tie yourself to a woman like me. Take on another man's child. What would people say? Ryker's laugh was short and without humor. You think I give a damn what people say? I never have. His expression grew serious again. As for Emma, she's an innocent child who deserves love and protection. I'd be proud to provide that, and you. His voice softened. You're the strongest, most decent woman I've ever known. Tears pricked at Bethany's eyes. You hardly know me. I know enough, Ryker said simply. I know you put your daughter's welfare above everything. I know you face hardship with courage. I know your laugh makes something in my chest lighter. I know I sleep better knowing you're safe under my roof. Bethany's thoughts whirled. This wasn't how she had imagined marriage, a hasty ceremony born of necessity rather than a culmination of courtship. And yet, there was something undeniably right about Ryker's steady presence in her life, in the way Emma's face lit up at the sound of his voice, in the quiet moments they'd shared over the past weeks. Yes, she said finally, the word barely audible. Ryker's eyebrows rose slightly. Yes. Bethany nodded, more firmly this time. Yes, I'll marry you. The tension in Ryker's shoulders eased visibly. All right then, I'll ride for the preacher. He owes me a favor, won't ask too many questions. He hesitated, then reached out slowly to touch her cheek. Thank you for trusting me, Bethany. Before she could respond, he was mounting his horse again, riding out with the same urgency with which he'd arrived, leaving Bethany to wonder at the irrevocable turn her life had just taken. The next few hours passed in a blur. Bethany bathed and dressed Emma in her cleanest gown, then washed herself and put on the one dress she owned that wasn't faded or mended, a simple blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes. She twisted her hair into a neat bun, wishing for flowers or ribbons to mark the occasion, but finding a strange peace in the simplicity of the moment. Ryker returned with the preacher, a kind-faced man who asked no questions beyond confirming that they both entered the marriage willingly. The ceremony itself was brief, conducted in the main room of Ryker's house with only Emma as witness, gurgling happily in Bethany's arms. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Ryker's kiss was gentle, almost tentative, a promise rather than a passion. The preacher departed immediately after, leaving the newly formed family alone in a silence laden with unspoken thoughts. They'll be here soon, Ryker said finally, breaking the silence. Are you ready? Bethany nodded, grateful for the practical focus. What do we tell them? The truth, more or less. That we met on the trail, that I offered you shelter, that one thing led to another. His eyes met hers, steady and reassuring. That Emma is now my daughter in every way that matters. The words, spoken with such certainty, brought a lump to Bethany's throat. Thank you, she whispered, Ryker's hand found hers, his calloused fingers entwining with her smaller ones. "No need for thanks between us, not anymore." The sound of approaching horses drew their attention. Ryker squeezed her hand once before releasing it, his posture straightening as he moved to the door. "Stay behind me," he instructed quietly. "But keep your head high. You've done nothing to be ashamed of." Mayor Whitfield led the small party himself, the sheriff from Silverstone, and two men Bethany recognized as members of the town council. Their expressions ranged from smugly triumphant to uncomfortable as they dismounted in front of the house. "Hayes," the mayor called, his tone falsely jovial. "Heard you might be harboring a fugitive." Ryker stepped onto the porch, his stance relaxed but alert. "No fugitives here, Whitfield, just my wife and daughter," the mayor's smile faltered. "Wife, that's not what I heard." "I heard you picked up Bethany Rogers and her bastard on the trail out of Silverstone. Watch your language when speaking about my family." Ryker's voice was dangerously soft. "And yes, I met Bethany on the trail, offered her shelter during the storm. We were married by Reverend Johnson this very afternoon." The sheriff stepped forward, his hand hovering near his gun. "That's mighty convenient timing, Hayes." "Nothing convenient about it," Ryker replied evenly. "Just the natural conclusion when a man finds the woman he wants to spend his life with." Bethany moved to stand beside Ryker, Emma in her arms, her heart pounding but her expression composed. "Mayor Whitfield, Sheriff, you made it clear I wasn't welcome in Silverstone. I've respected that. I haven't returned nor attempted to. I've found a new home, a new life." The mayor's face darkened. "A life built on lies. That child isn't Hayes's, and we all know it." "Emma is my daughter now," Ryker stated firmly, his hand moving to rest protectively on the baby's head. "The law recognizes that, even if you don't." The standoff stretched taut between them until one of the council members, Mr. Peterson, who owned the general store, shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. "Whitfield, maybe we should leave this be," he suggested. "They're married now. The woman's not in our jurisdiction anymore." "And what about the stories she'll tell?" the mayor demanded. "The reputation of our town of my son, your son," Bethany interrupted, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "made promises he never intended to keep. But that's between him and his maker now. I have no interest in the past. My concern is for the future, my daughter's future, my husband's future, our future together." Something in her words, or perhaps in the picture they presented, Ryker tall and protective beside her, Emma peaceful in her arms, seemed to deflate the mayor's righteous anger. He glared at them for a long moment, then spat on the ground. "Fine. Keep your sordid little family. But don't either of you ever set foot in Silverstone again, you hear?" "Wouldn't dream of it," Ryker replied coolly. "Now, if you gentlemen wouldn't mind, my wife has supper waiting and it's been a long day." With reluctant nods, the men from Silverstone mounted their horses and turned back toward town, the mayor's rigid back radiating disapproval even as they disappeared from view. Bethany released a shaky breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Do you think they'll come back?" Ryker shook his head. "Whitfield's all bluster. He knows he has no legal standing now." He turned to face her, his expression softening. "Are you all right?" Bethany nodded, though tears threatened. "I never thought I'd have this again, a home, protection, someone standing beside me." "You have it now," Ryker said simply. "For as long as you want it." The reality of their situation settled over them as they returned inside, married in name, strangers in many ways, bound by circumstance and a shared desire to protect Emma. That night, Ryker insisted on sleeping in the small cabin, leaving Bethany and Emma the main house. "Nothing needs to change between us," he assured her. "This marriage is for your protection, not anything else." Bethany had nodded, grateful for his understanding, even as a part of her wondered what it might be like to truly be his wife in every sense. Days passed, turning into weeks. The rhythm of ranch life continued, cattle to tend, repairs to make, meals to prepare. But now there was a new ease between them, the simple comfort of shared purpose. Ryker taught Bethany to ride, laughing with genuine delight at her initial clumsiness, and then with pride as she quickly mastered the skill. She, in turn, transformed the bachelor's quarters into a true home, hanging curtains sewn from fabric Ryker brought from town, arranging wildflowers on the table, filling the rooms with the scent of fresh bread and stew. Emma thrived under their combined care, growing round-cheeked and happy. She began to reach for Ryker whenever he entered the room, her tiny face lighting with recognition and joy. The first time she fell asleep on his chest, Bethany found him sitting motionless in the rocking chair long after the baby had drifted off, his expression one of wonder and fierce protectiveness. "I never thought I'd have this," he confessed quietly when he noticed Bethany watching. "A child." "A family? Neither did I," Bethany replied, moving to stand beside the chair, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "Not after everything that happened." Ryker's free hand covered hers, warm and steady. "Do you regret it, marrying me?" Bethany shook her head without hesitation. "No, do you?" "Never." His eyes held hers, the emotion in them unmistakable. "Bethany, I know our marriage began as a necessity, but I need you to know my feelings for you are real. They have been almost from the beginning." Bethany's heart skipped. "Ryker, you don't need to say anything," he added quickly. "I just wanted you to know. Whatever happens between us, whatever you decide you want for your future, that truth doesn't change." In response, Bethany leaned down and pressed her lips to his, a gentle kiss that deepened as Ryker responded with a hunger that matched her own awakening desire. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Emma still sleeping peacefully between them, Bethany rested her forehead against his. "I think," she whispered, "that I'd like my future to be right here with you." That night, for the first time, they shared a bed tentatively at first, then with growing confidence as they discovered each other. Ryker's touch was reverent, his whispered words of love and need washing away the last of Bethany's doubts. In his arms, she found not just passion but a profound sense of homecoming, as if the winding path of her life had always been leading to this man, this place, this moment. As winter settled over the ranch, bringing deep snows and long evenings by the fire, their bond deepened into something neither had dared hope for: a true partnership, built on respect and growing love. Ryker proved to be a patient father, teaching Emma to crawl across the thick bearskin rug before the hearth, his laughter joining Bethany's as the baby discovered her new mobility. When spring came, bringing wildflowers and new calves to the pastures, Bethany discovered she was expecting a child, their child. She shared the news with Ryker as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emma now toddling unsteadily between them. Ryker's response was to gather her into his arms with such tenderness it brought tears to her eyes. "I never thought I could be this happy," he confessed, his voice rough with emotion. "You and Emma, you saved me from a life of loneliness I didn't even know I was living." "We saved each other," Bethany corrected gently, laying her hand over his where it rested on her still flat stomach. "All of us." In October, as the aspen trees turned gold against the mountainsides, their son was born, a sturdy boy with Ryker's blue eyes and a shock of dark hair. They named him Samuel, after Ryker's father, and when Emma, now steady on her feet and full of toddler curiosity, was allowed to meet her brother, she patted his tiny head with surprising gentleness. "Baby," she pronounced solemnly, looking to Ryker for confirmation. "That's right, sweetheart," he affirmed, lifting her onto his knee so she could see the infant in Bethany's arms better. "That's your brother. You're a big sister now." "Like family," Emma said, one of her newer phrases, clearly proud of using it correctly. "Yes," Bethany agreed, her heart so full it felt it might burst. "We're a family." 5 years later, the Hayes Ranch had prospered and expanded. Bethany and Ryker had added a daughter, little Rose, to their family, and Emma, now a spirited 6-year-old with her mother's golden hair and her adoptive father's steady gaze, was preparing for her first day of school. "Will they be nice to me?" she asked as Bethany braided her hair that morning. "Of course they will," Bethany assured her. Everyone will love you just as we do. And if anyone isn't nice, Ryker added from where he was helping 4-year-old Samuel with his boots, you tell them your pa raises the biggest bulls in the territory. Bethany shot him a look of mock disapproval but couldn't help laughing at Emma's delighted expression. You're teaching her to brag, she admonished. I'm teaching her to be proud of her family, Ryker corrected with a wink. Later, after the children had been delivered to the new schoolhouse in town, a town that had grown considerably since Bethany's arrival, and where she was now respected as Mrs. Hayes, the rancher's capable wife, she and Ryker rode home together, little Rose sleeping in a sling across Bethany's chest. Do you ever think about it? Ryker asked as they approached the ranch, the autumn sunlight gilding the familiar buildings. How different things might have been if I hadn't happened upon you that day on the trail, Bethany considered the question. Sometimes. I think about how close I came to losing everything and instead found everything I never knew I wanted. She smiled at him, the love between them as strong and steady as the mountains surrounding their home. I was banished with my baby, and you took us both into your saddle. It was the bravest, kindest thing anyone had ever done for me. Not brave, Ryker disagreed softly. Just the only choice that made any sense. From the moment I saw you standing there, so determined to protect your child, I think a part of me knew. Knew what? That my life wouldn't be complete without you in it. He reached across the space between their horses to take her hand. I love you, Bethany Hayes. Every day I'm grateful you chose to stay. I love you too, she replied, the words as true now as the first time she'd spoken them. And I'm not going anywhere. This is where I belong, where we all belong. As they crested the final rise and their ranch came into full view, Bethany felt a profound sense of peace. The path that had led her here had been marked by pain and loss, but had ultimately brought her to a love deeper than she had ever imagined possible. In Ryker's eyes, in the children they were raising together in the home they had built, she had found not just shelter, but the truest meaning of family. The banishment that had once seemed like an ending had, in fact, been just the beginning.